speaking. The proceeding of the conference is available online. You just go on the web page and you click over here in the proceeding. And the code will be education. Okay? Thank you.
Hello. Hello. It's such a pleasure to be here today. I presented once before at a conference here with Eric, and it was an amazing opportunity because there were so many people from so many different places able to come together and just share this information, interdisciplinary information. So I think you're really going to enjoy the conference. I want to start off by telling you a little bit about an event that took place on our university campus. I want to be a transformational leader for you. I want to empower you to use this process or this method at your institution or wherever it is that you deliver your service. Because the idea here is that we're going to transition from diversity, which is all about potentially having some knowledge and being a part of something and knowing that other people are here and knowing that other people are different, but to multiculturalism, where we begin to respect and appreciate and embrace people of all different cultures. So what I want to provide for you today is a recipe for negotiating conflict and historical tragedies, you understand, historical biases in a unique, healthy environment with lots of different people. Now, so first I want to begin by providing our ideological transition. So at this point, if you are in the mode of diversity, I want to uplift you and move you to thinking about multiculturalism. And this is how we'll do it. If you are in a mode of diverse thinking, you may in fact want to encourage inclusion, especially when things are changing. But there's nothing wrong with that, you understand? So what we're not trying to do is to say that something is wrong with diversity. We just want to step it up to the next level. And what we want to do here is we want to encourage expression. So not just the idea that you have input from people, but you actually have participation, where you're welcoming ideas and you're engaging people and allowing them to have a voice in the space. So not just that you can come, oh yeah, come on, you can come to my party, and then you don't talk to the person, you understand? But that you actually encourage expression and involvement and acceptance. Next, now, we have this idea here that we might be able to tolerate people. Well, you know, she's different, she dresses in a unique way, and, that type of thing. No, I want to understand why you dress this way. You understand? Why do you do the things that you do? Why is this special to you? Why is this valuable? Why is this something that I need to bring into my space and accept as something that is healthy? These are the things that we need to start thinking. Not just that you allow somebody to come here, but that you begin thinking about this person and embracing who they are and what they stand for. Next. Okay. Don't touch it. Okay. Promote apprehension of conflict resolution tools. I need you to understand, as a diversity leader, right, the tools that I have in my toolbox that are going to allow us to grow, that are going to allow us to move forward. But not only embracing these tools, but respecting the process that someone else is using. If we look from a top-down perspective at something, we always have this set of tools in our toolbox, and we think that this is the right way to do it. Our way is the right way. Well, somebody else has another way, and you need to respect that there's another way of doing it, and that way may take us to another level. It may help us to see the world in some type of unique way that we had not seen it before. But we have to release, we have to step back for a moment. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about taking a transition, moving from diversity to multiculturalism. And last, of course, celebrate the idea. Yay! I had a party, and there were all of these people from all these different groups at my party. That's great. But we have to say difference is beautiful, you know. Difference is amazing. Difference is something that we can welcome. Difference is something that makes us a healthier group. Not just, oh, it's so great that we have difference, but embracing that it is there in a special and unique way. And that's what I want us to do. So there is a difference between diversity and multiculturalism. So when you begin to see in the news, in the media, people talking about diversity, but then you also see this word, multiculturalism, popping up. In the literature, this is what they're talking about. They're talking about a shift from assimilation and tolerance to cultural pluralism and respect for other people, and embracing difference instead of having this anticipation that as your diverse group moves together, you will blend together and become one. I'm not talking to you about becoming one. I'm talking to you about we all bringing something special that we have to the table and becoming a dynamic, amazing group, and that's what this conference is all about. Everybody in here, you can have a different perspective. You can have a different idea. This is why Eric's conference is so dynamic. It's so amazing because you can think from different perspectives and we can bring that difference together. We can bridge that difference and become a multicultural group. So I hope we can embrace that as we move forward. Can you move to the next slide? All right. So in academia, I'm trying to promote this same philosophy on our campus at Shepherd University. My goal is to create a movement, institutional change, institutional movement. Students are going to present today about a multicultural survey. They're going to provide you with recommendations for advancing multicultural ideologies on the college campus. I want to reinvigorate a pedagogy. I want to reteach history. I want people to step back and reflect and to think critically about some of the things that have happened and how those things make us feel. You know, how do we feel about it? And it's a very tough conversation for the reason that when you talk about race, when you talk about gender inequality, when you talk about gay and lesbian relationships, when you talk about poverty, these are conversations that make people nervous. These are conversations that scare people because you don't want to say something that upsets somebody. You don't want to feel uncomfortable. So I'm trying to show you how in an academic setting we can talk about these issues. We can communicate about these issues so that we can better understand difference from a multicultural perspective. Now next, what we want to do is re-examine tradition. We want to re-examine tradition. And we want to see if biases exist in that tradition. So of course, my students that I had 12 years ago in a general sociology class, they had the 5th edition of the textbook. My students now have the 13th edition of that same textbook. Now I am sure that between the 5th and the 13th edition of this book, that there were biases that were corrected, that there were topics that were discussed, there was change. But why are we so afraid in our society today to discuss this change? We almost pretend like the book only has different pictures in it. You know, oh, we're just transitioning the book because we have a couple different images and some pictures and we wanted to, you know, add a few quotes from the more modern politicians and things like that. No, they are actually changing language. They are changing perspectives as time moves on. And sometimes in society we become so stuck in tradition that we don't take the time to talk about change. We don't take the time to talk about change. We don't take the time to reflect and to think about how change has impacted who we are, how we see the world, and how our words make other people feel. How do your words make other people feel? You are an important player. Everyone in here is a leader. So your words are powerful, and they make people feel a certain way. So why not step back and think critically about tradition, about history, about biases, create a pedagogy, a dominant pedagogy, that explores difference, not from a perspective of diversity, but from a multicultural perspective. Next slide. So this event, it was called From Diversity to Multiculturalism. And during this event, we showed a documentary called Cracking the Codes, Systems of Inequity. I invited 125 people, community members, faculty members, staff, faculty from other universities, students, all to come together to talk about racial inequality, to talk about institutional and systematic discrimination. I used the video as a context to bring people together because the video could say things that maybe I couldn't say because I'm black. I know you didn't know. It's really tough, you know. But actually, yes, I'm an African-American person, I'm a black woman, you know. And so being a black woman, when I say certain things, I say it using this black woman's voice. And even if I don't mean something a certain way, people are going to take that information in because of the stereotypes, because of the perspectives, because of what you've seen in the past. You're going to take that in. And you'll probably interpret what I say a little bit differently sometimes than what I actually meant. So we have this video, and this video brings in perspectives from all different groups. But how can I bring people together? How can I make people talk? How can I make the audience communicate? Well, I thought of a plan. There's a theory, transformational leadership theory. Raise your hand if you've heard of transformational leadership theory before. Anybody heard of transformational leadership theory? Okay, thank you for the hand. Thank you, one hand. Okay, so transformational leadership theory is a theory where this leader empowers people through motivation, through charisma, okay? But who they are, they bring something special to the table. They encourage people, they empower people to think critically about their own goals and to help them push them to another level. And so to be transformational, there are a series of characteristics that one might have. And I thought, if I'm going to pull a panel together, I need to make sure that the people on the panel have some of these characteristics because I know that these characteristics are going to bring something special out. So I began to look for people in the community, students, because I wanted a diverse panel. I wanted black people. I wanted white people. I wanted a gay and lesbian population. I wanted people from the church. I wanted people from business. I wanted faculty members. I wanted staff. I wanted everyday people, you know, someone who's just a business person, who is a happy, lovely, amazing person who is going to come up here and speak about real life events. So I wanted a huge trajectory. But the common thing would be that these people possess some or one or two or some of these characteristics. Because I knew that when they got up in front of that group, after they watched a segment of that video, I knew that they would tell a story that would grab somebody and pull them in. Somebody who was ambitious. One of the panelists, she got up and she said, I've been played this role in office. I am now, on this committee, on that committee. I'm in charge of all of these different things. And when I went to my, my graduation, I brought with me a very dark-skinned African man who was my best friend. And my family members looked at him and said, what is he doing here? What is he doing here? And she said, what? What are you talking about? What do you mean, what is he doing here? This is my friend. This is my friend. But this woman had so much charisma, so much character, you understand? She had done so many things in the community. She had been innovative. She had been dedicated. She used strategic planning to bring government together, to bring society together. So people knew those things about her from her introduction, and she was able to reel them in. And when she gave a story, people thought, oh, that's very interesting. Let me think about something that happened to me. Let me think about something that has happened to me. So again, when we select these people who are going to engage to take us from diversity to multiculturalism, we want to make sure that they attain some of these leadership qualities because we need them to be able to grab people and to get them encouraged, get them ready to move in the direction that we need them to go into. And that was very powerful. That was a very powerful piece. Next slide. So, of course, in order to do something like this, Most academics are going to say, well, I need some type of literature review. You know, I need to make sure. So my academic people in here, I can give you this story. I can tell you about charisma. I can tell you about all of these different things. But in order for you to hear me in a top-down society, I need to have research, right? I need to have literature to back this information so that you understand that there is a history. There is an academic history. Here are some of the things that you needed to know for this event to be successful. You needed to think critically about the history of diversity at universities. You had to think about that before you select the video, the documentary that you're going to play. You have to understand the history of your particular space. Because some of you may not be able to bring something very, very controversial to your particular setting. You have to think critically about the trajectory, the history. You have to know where they're going, right, and where they've come from before you try to bring something to take, because they might not be ready, you know. You say, oh, I'm going to do what Dr. Howard-Bostic did. I'm going to bring this video to my school, and he gets fired. You know, we don't want that to happen. You know, we want you to think critically about time and space so that you know that what you're introducing is unique and critical for that space that you're in. You may have to take baby steps. You may have to start off with diversity. Everybody understand that? Where you are, they may not have even gotten to diversity. They may not even know how to tolerate people, you know. So you may have to start with diversity and then progress over time and then move toward multiculturalism. But you understand the definition that we're putting forth for diversity, and you understand what we're talking about when we introduce multiculturalism. So you know that we have an ideology and we know where we can go with it. Next, group and team learning. So as a part of this conference, we did something unique. We had 14 panelists, but they were divided across 3 different panels, right? And there were 3 segments of the video. You with me? Now the first segment, the panelists spoke after the movie, after the documentary went off, right? And then the panelists provided some examples, right? And then we opened it up, and I had a microphone in my hand, and I walked around, and anybody in the audience could stand up and introduce some type of point or some type of story or express something that related to the comments that either the panel made or something that they heard about in that segment of the documentary. So the first segment, we went around and individuals who were brave enough, because this is where you get it started. You're going to have your transformational people. Back to the last slide. The people in the audience who possessed these characteristics were most willing to stand up and to say something during the event. You understand? So it all goes back to these particular characteristics, because when there's a sensitive topic, you need brave people. So listen, I had to recruit people in the audience, you understand? So I knew that some people would not want to do the panel, but I said, if you can think of anything that you might want to say, please don't let me look crazy up in here. Stand up and say something to get the ball rolling on this event. So you have to think critically, you have to rally up your team, and you have to find the people who are going to work in the group. We can go back to the next one. So group and team learning is important because you have to have some form of cooperation, cooperative learning. You have to have people, you know, sometimes you have, I'm sure some of you have done a presentation or something, and you wanted to give out prizes, and you had to say, Tracy, say this and I'll give you a prize, right? You may have to sometimes prompt people so that you can get it going. Next, small groups and training. So for the second segment of the workshop, okay, we had the documentary played the second portion, right, of the documentary. We played that. And then the panelists, the second set of panelists spoke. Now, the first set of panelists consisted of maybe students and faculty, right? The second panel consisted of pastors, you understand, and then, you know, some administrative folks. Everybody understand that, right? So when I created the panels, I made sure that the panels were also diverse. And so when you heard from the next group, they were coming from a totally different perspective, perhaps, because there were a different group of people up there. But then, for the second panel, I had people at circle tables. So there are 120 people, 25 some odd people, and they're all at tables. Now keep in mind, go back to the previous slide, all the tables were labeled with these terms. So before I started, I told everybody, if you're at this table, it's because I think you're charismatic. If you're at this table, it's because I think you're transformational. If you're at this table, it's because you're dynamic. So I gave them a charge. In order for people to be a part of something, they have to feel like they belong. You are dynamic. You are transformational. You are charismatic, you understand? You are a delegate, you know, you are amazing. You bring something to the table. You bring people together. So I gave them something to hold on to so that they could feel like they were a part of the program, a part of the process, okay? Next slide. Now, we broke people up in that second segment. After the panelists spoke, then people broke up into their small group. And they spoke at the table with each other. So you didn't have to be as brave, but now you know you're charismatic. You know you have something to bring to the table. And now you're with a group of dynamic people, right? And you're going to communicate together, right? Now, at that table, I made sure that there were faculty members, students, community people. Everybody understand that? I made the tables very, very diverse so that you could hear something from people in just different walks of life. Different walks of life. Last, understanding social problems. So, I'm a sociologist. So social problems, that's where I'm coming from. That's the standpoint that I'm coming from. I put together a set of worksheets. So each time they broke out, they had a worksheet. And I'll talk to you in a second about this triangular theoretical perspective that I used. But each worksheet, you start out really small, right, with the topic. And it becomes more complex. So when we broke into small groups, it was right in the middle of the conversation. Everybody understand that? So we started small symbolically. We started talking about meaning. We started talking about symbols, just little things, you know, little things that make us feel a certain way. Mm-hmm. And then by the time we got into the groups, we could talk about biases, lies, things that have happened, things that made you feel cruddy because somebody, you know, accused you of doing something and they should not have done that. You understand? So we got bigger in the conversation, and the documentary helped because it provided a context for the conversation. Next slide. So this is the triangular approach. First, sociologists, anybody ever taken general sociology class? Maybe, well, here it is today. This is your first exposure to general sociology. There are 3 dynamic theoretical paradigms that sociologists use when you're trying to assess a social problem. The first is symbolic interactionism. All right? What's the first one? What is it? Symbolic interactionism, right? So the first is, what's it called? Symbolic, you're gonna work with me here? Symbolic interactionism. I'm trying to make sure that everybody's with me. So the first theory is symbolic interactionism. That is all about symbols. It's about interpreting symbols. It's about exploring the reality. So what does this thing mean to me? So if someone puts a picture of a gorilla on the screen, what does that gorilla mean to me? If somebody says, you are this gorilla, what does that mean to me? Is there a historical trajectory that is connected to this gorilla and somebody calling me a black woman a gorilla? So we have symbols, but symbols is just a thing. But you got to remember that there's a history connected to every single symbol. And so the more we understand history, the better we'll understand the meaning, understanding culture, understanding what these different symbols mean to people in the room. I could give you all a picture, and that picture would mean something totally different to everybody in this room because you have a set of toolboxes, you have a set of tools in your box, and you have experiences, and those experiences help you understand what that means. So this was a very dynamic experience for the people in the room because we talked about a couple critical symbols, and those symbols meant something very special to different people at different tables. And it opened their eyes to this issue of race, relations, and structural and institutional discrimination. The second theory is conflict theory. But conflict theory can be basic or it can be radical, and of course, what do you think I chose? Radical, right? So the critical conflict theory, when you examine the relationship between the people on the top and the people on the bottom, and you say, okay, we have people on top and we have people on the bottom, and the reason why those people on the bottom is probably because the people on the top want a lot of power, right? It's probably because they're trying to control the people on the bottom, and so that is the exact perspective that I had people use. I wanted them to explore power relationships. I wanted them to explore racism. I wanted them to understand some of the dynamics that existed in society over time as a result of racism. And what we really focused on is unconscious behavior, ways that we've been taught, we've been socialized to treat people in certain ways, and we do it unconsciously, and people had to step back. They had to step back and say, wait a minute, I think that I'm a person who respects other people, but when they put these symbols on this television show or in this documentary, I realized that some of the things that are actually horrible are the things that I think. And they had to step back and say, wow, I wonder where I learned that. Who taught me that? And you have to reflect. Do I want to change or not? And so this was very powerful, you understand, because when you're watching this documentary, it's silent. And it's just you and the documentary. And you're thinking like, do I do this? Do my friends do this? How does this happen? Why are we like this? Why do we treat people in this way? And so using a radical conflict theory was a very powerful moment for some of the participants. And then last was structural. That's when we look at the rules. What rules and regulations exist in society that create disparities? There are lots of rules out there that put some people in position to be on the bottom. Just because of the rules. Because of the rules, now I can't succeed. Because my school receives this amount of funding, my books are chained to the desk. Can you imagine that? Anybody here go to a school where the books were chained to the desk? I did. I went to a school, the books were chained to the desk. You feel like a prisoner as a student when you can't take a book home and it's chained to the side of the desk? Because this book is so important, because it's all they have. It's not about the book being chained to the desk. It's about disparity. It's about economic disparity. But to the student, it's education in jail. You're in prison. You can't take the information home. You can read it one time, and that's it. How much would you all learn if you could read something one time? But that's equal opportunity, all right? Equal opportunity. Everybody has books. Yeah? Institutional discrimination. This is what we talked about in the third segment, okay? And we used our workshop to do that. Next slide. I want to show you a clip, if I don't die. From the video. Okay, maybe.
My sister-in-law, who's half black, half white, but looks white, blue eyes, whiter than most white folks, very white. She and I, we kind of grew up together. We raised our children together. So they're first cousins, and it's a wonderful, very, very multicultural family. So we're going into Safeway one day, and Kathleen, my sister-in-law, is in front of me, and she's, writing a check for her groceries. Now, my daughter, who at the time was 10 years old, was standing with me, and I was directly behind her, getting ready to get my groceries. So Kathleen comes up, and the checker, who is a strawberry blonde, freckled, very delightful, warm, the checker, this young woman, is talking to Kathleen. Hey, how you doing? Isn't it a nice day today? They're just chatting up, and says, yes. So Kathleen writes her check, and she steps off to the side with her groceries because she's waiting for me. Of course, again, Kathleen looks white, right? So I come up. No conversation. She looks up at me. Absolutely no, just a little chatter. And I write my check. My daughter, however, is 10. Notices immediately the difference in how she responds to me. So I write my check, and she goes, I'm going to need 2 pieces of ID. At which point, my daughter looks at me, and she gets very, very embarrassed, and tears are kind of coming from her eye, like, Mommy, you're not going to let her do this. Why is she doing this to us, right? So I'm trying to figure out what I should do, because behind me are 2 elderly white women. All right, and I'm thinking, okay, so then I become the angry black woman. All right, and they're going to be And I'm just trying to second guess all the drama. So then I just give her the 2 pieces of ID. I said, you know, some things you gotta choose your battles, right? And then it gets worse. She pulls out the bad check book. Right? So this is the book that shows the people who have written bad checks. So she starts searching for my license in the bad checks, at which point it's just out of control now. Just as I'm standing there, trying to decide what to do, and it's really deeply humiliating. Now my daughter's in full-blown emotionally upset, who's 10. My sister-in-law walks back over, and she steps in and she says, excuse me, why are you doing this? And the checker goes, well, what do you mean? She goes, why are you taking her through all of these changes? Why are you doing that? She goes, well, this is our policy. She goes, no, it's not your policy because you didn't do that with me. Oh, well, I know you've been, she goes, no, she's been here for years. I've only lived here for 3 months. And so at this point, the 2 white elderly ladies go, oh, I can't believe what this checker has done with this woman. It is totally unacceptable. At which point, the manager walks over. So the manager walks over and says, is there a problem here? And then my sister-in-law again responds. She goes, yes, there is a problem here. Here is what happened. So you see, she used her white privilege. And even though Kathleen is half black and half white, she recognizes what that means. And she made the statement. She pointed out the injustice. And she, as a result of that one act, influenced everyone in that space. But what would have happened? I can't know for certain had the black woman said, this is unfair. Why are you doing this to me? Would it have had the same impact? But Kathleen knew that she walked through the world differently than I did. And she used her white privilege to educate and make right a situation that was wrong. That's what you can do every single day.
All right. Okay, so that's just one example, you know, of a segment of the documentary. And so the documentary as a whole, they talked about how different ideologies and identities were constructed. They talked about how some attitudes were biased or unconscious over time. And they talked about all groups of people. They talked about different ethnic minorities. They talked about women. They talked about gender. Talked about all these different groups and how these groups had a different reality, how they walked through the world in a unique way because they weren't at the top of the hierarchy. And together, as a group, we engaged in a dialogue about this, a very healthy conversation using transformational leaders to bring us together with conversation and real life experience and stories to help people understand some of the issues that are going on in society today, to make it real for them, to make it a reality for everybody. One of the interesting segments was about the fear of black males and talked about how, you know, black men were expected to be football players or basketball players, but expected to not be the most intelligent person in the room, so that they felt outside of themselves or very different or as an outcast if they attempted to be the most educated person. That was very interesting for some people. It was a dynamic that made them say, wow, you know, do I expect every black man to be an athlete? And when they're not an athlete, do I say, oh, wow, you've got a college degree? That's awesome. Next slide. There were survey results. I'm going to pull this out for to tell you about a couple of the statistics. They were very interesting, I thought the stats were. So there were about 125 people there. They had to fill out a pre-survey and a post-survey. The event was about 3 hours long, so if someone did not fill out the pre-survey and the post-survey, we couldn't use their data. So 96 out of the 125, 5 of us were actually in charge of the conference, and we didn't use our survey results, you know. So we still got a huge, I think we got a huge set of data out of the people who stayed all the way to the end and completed. There were 57 white people, 30 African American or black, 1 Asian, and 5 who were of mixed race. categories that they wrote down and, you know, specifically identified themselves with. There were 21 faculty members, 3 staff members, 50 students from 3 different universities and colleges, and 22 community members from New York State, Maryland, West Virginia, and Virginia. So it was a very diverse population. You had 47 people between the ages of 18 and 24, 14 people between 25 and 40, 15 people between 40 years old and 50, and then we actually had 17 people who were 50 years old or older. There were several participants who were in their 70s, and if you look at the comments that they made, you know, some of them said, you know, this is the most interesting and effective event that I've ever been to in my life. You know, in my life. And said to me, please do something like this in our community again. Please continue to do things like this, because we've never seen had this type of conversation before. We've never had this type of dialogue, and I liked it. And I believe that I know so much less than what I thought. So with that being said, there's some statistics here. The workshop influenced change in attitude among 39 of the survey population. But the thing is, I asked them in the pre and post survey, how familiar are you with issues of multiculturalism? And they answered the question before, and then they answered the question after, okay? So 25% increased their familiarity at the end. But 11.4% said that they feel like they knew less than what they thought. And so that's an interesting dynamic. It's not bad that they shifted back. It just shows that potentially they questioned their familiarity, and then the comments that they made showed that they wanted to learn more. They needed to involve themselves more. They thought they were in a certain position. They thought they knew something, but after engaging the video, they realized that they needed to do self-reflection, or they needed to, read and become more involved, or to do something. And some of the comments, it said, I learned that I am capable of speaking up in a smaller group. So there were some people who identified themselves as introverts and said, when I'm in this group, I feel more comfortable. I felt more comfortable in segment 2 of the workshop. I didn't want to stand up and make a comment in front of everybody, right? And I didn't want to be singled out. For the third one, we had a prize. So we had a couple tablets. And if they pulled a raffle ticket, if they won the raffle, then they got the tablet for providing whatever their response was. So people were really excited about potentially getting a tablet. So people worked really hard. So it's so funny what you can do with technology and money, right? How you can really get people to participate. If you say, if we pull your information, then you're going to get an iPad. No, I didn't want to participate before, but the iPad is pretty appetizing. I'll do it now, So that was an interesting way, because it was such a long workshop, to keep them involved, because, some people were probably ready to go after 2 hours. I have a 15-minute attention span. I hope you all are still in it right now. Anyway, I know it's been a long time. Okay, so more. I have greater clarity of invisible biases, right? So there's some things that perhaps I didn't see, but now I see. I was blind, but now I see. So that's an interesting dynamic. I realize things that I don't think about twice by being white. So people recognize that they have privilege because of either their skin color or the money that they have, or, whatever position. They understand that they're stratified in society. One of the segments was really interesting. It talked about how this woman was a middle-class black woman, but there were still lots of inequalities that existed between her and a poor black woman. That money made a difference. That because she had money, she had more privilege than did this woman who had the same race as she did. So they talked about things like that. It was interesting. One of the students said there is still inequality among people of color. So on this predominantly white campus, there were a huge population of people who believed that because Barack Obama is the president of the United States, that there is no more inequality between black and white people. So that was eye-opening for these particular students. All right. This is the best part, the end. If you look on your table, I have a treat for you. This is a gift from me. A special flash drive for you for listening. Thank you for listening. This is your empowerment drive. If you look on the second page of your handout, you will see the content on the screen of your empowerment drive. If you would like to have an event like this in the future, there are a list of references for you, of information. There's a YouTube link that gives you a version of the documentary, but I would be happy to mail you the documentary if you'd like to do the event on your campus. It's $350. I would be happy to share it with anybody here if you would like to do that. There are 11 PDF files of different academic research that relate to the topic so that you are familiar and you can share this information with colleagues or whomever. There is a participation consent form and pre and post surveys if you have to do an IRB process or if you have to be involved in anything like that, that's all done for you. There are glossary terms. If you have a group of people, one of the pastors who attended this event, she actually had a workshop at the church using this video afterward, and they didn't use the event worksheets, but they use the glossary words to kind of talk about those words. So there are lots of different ways that you can have an event like this. So this is one of the ways. The different worksheets that we used when we broke the people up into segments: worksheet 1 using symbolic interactionism, worksheet 2 using critical theory, worksheet 3 looking at structural functionalism. Those sheets are there for you to use as well. And then there's an event flyer that you can edit to do this yourself. So thank you.